Hey guys! So, welcome to this vocational preaching with the theme of spousal love. So, for those who don't know me, let me introduce myself. My name is Milen. I am a missionary of the Covenant community in the Shalom Catholic community with temporary promises. This year, I'm renewing my temporary promises for the 5th time. So I'm also a celibate for the kingdom. I live in Montreal, and where we have our diffusion of the work. And I want to now introduce you to the main topic, the main character of this preaching, and that is Him. He is Jesus, and in our Shalom charism, we also call Him the risen one who went through the cross. And basically, he can be represented in different ways, but I'm going to show you another way that we represent him. That is him right here, and that is another person, and we'll address who that person is in just a moment. So the way I was thinking about going about my preaching is in a way of Q&A, question and answers, right? Commonly asked questions about spousal love. So let's start with the first question. What exactly is spousal love, right? Or what inspired it? What's the inspiration behind it? So you guys must have by now the writings of the Shalom Catholic community, which is the book written by our founder to describe our spirituality. And to answer the question, what's the inspiration behind the spousal love? We will see in this book, in the writing called Spousal Love, that we have two patron saints, Saint Francis of Assisi and Saint Teresa of Avila. In Numbers 14 of Spousal Love, it says, "In the community, the spirituality of spousal love will be encouraged by studying the lives and writings of Saint Francis of Assisi and Saint Teresa of Avila, seeking to experience in our own vocation the same love that burned in their hearts." So what exactly is that love that burned in their hearts? If we look at Saint Francis of Assisi, we know that one of his most famous sentences for us is, "Love is not loved. It is a cry of his heart," basically calling all of us to spousal love, to love the one that is not loved, which is Jesus Christ, whom we call the risen one who went through the cross. On the other end, Saint Teresa of Avila, she says, God alone is enough. So basically, she gives us the path, the way to practice the spousal love, right? Spousal love, which is that cry of Saint Francis, who said that love is not loved, calling us to love the one that is not loved. And Saint Teresa answers the question, how do we do that? With spousal love. Basically, she is our master of contemplation, because we see that the first thing that we need to do in order to practice spousal love is live a life of prayer, live a life of contemplation, and she shows us how to do that. Question number 2. Is spousal love just for celibates? People who, like me, decided to give their heart, body, soul, everything to Jesus Christ, as opposed to a husband and family and kids? The answer is no. And here in the same book of Spousal Love, in the same writing, it says, "In the Shalom work, spousal love is not characterized by the celibate of the kingdom vocation only. No, all are called to live it. All are spouse souls of Jesus. All must seek to be the wise bridesmaids who await the nuptial moment, keeping the flame of love lit in their lamps. Lay people, priests, celibates for the kingdom, young people, children, men, women, married couples, all of them are called in Shalom to love our King and Lord and to be ever more inflamed by this love, in thirst of prayer, union with the beloved, and service, doing the will of the beloved, to let the Spirit enhance their vocation and their lives. Which brings us back to that image that I mentioned, that I showed you guys earlier. We have our spouse, Jesus Christ, the risen one who went to the cross, and then we have this person who is his bride. So as much as I'm a celibate and I'm a bride of Christ through my state of life, all of you guys, if you are called to the Shalom vocation, even if it's just in our prayer group and not as a missionary, you are called to be this person right here. Jesus' bride, Jesus' spouse. Okay? Next question. How do we practice it, spousal love, concretely? So I mentioned it's a bit in the last definition that I read about who is called first to spousal love. We said that it was everyone, right? Priests, married people, everybody. And it mentioned to do the will of the beloved. Okay? So this brings me to the tripod of the vocation. We already talked about one first. Imagine, a phone that's on a tripod. So you have 3 feet, right? So the first one, the most important one, is contemplation. And we already mentioned that our master of contemplation is Saint Teresa of Avila. How do we master that? Concretely in Shalom, our prayer life should be lived as such. Every day, okay, and this is the ideal, this is what's written in our statutes. It does not mean that everyone is able to do it, does not mean that everyone does it. This is the ideal. As as Pope Francis said when we visited him last time in Rome, he said, whoever takes those statutes and is able to live them 100% should be canonized alive, because there's so many things, and we know that we don't always get to do them to their perfection. But in the best of worlds, we are called to pray for 2 hours per day. 1 hour of contemplation in personal prayer, which is basically unscripted, heart to heart with Jesus. And the other hour is Bible study. Okay? As vocationees, vocational discerners, also during postulancy and discipleship, which is the initial formation, the Bible studies are books that are already made, where you go through the steps of the Lectio Divina in a guided way, right? So, for example, there's a book called Lights Upon My Steps. I believe it's the name in English. There's volume 1, volume 2. So it all goes with the step of the way of peace. We start them in a prayer group, but there's some point in the prayer groups that coincides with the formation that postulants receive. So they also, in the postulancy, pray with those books until consecration. When we get consecrated, we are supposed to be masters of Lectio Divina. We don't need the step-by-step anymore. So we can just take the daily liturgy and pray with it, with the steps of the Lectio Divina, right? In contemplation, we can also, of course, include the most important moment of our day, which is when we receive Jesus in the Eucharist. In daily Mass, we are called to go daily, receive our beloved who awaits us in the Blessed Sacrament of the altar. We can also include our daily rosary. And when I say rosary, I mean chaplet. But our founder Moses has been insisting for the last few years that those who can and are disciplined enough and have time to do the full rosary, the community needs it. Okay, we need to intercede for the community, and the rosary is the perfect tool for that. Okay. So first foot of the tripod is contemplation. Second foot of the tripod is unity, which is basically the love we have for one another, our union with our brothers and sisters. And about this, Moises says in number 17, that's why, oh, I'm sorry. It's not number 17, it is number 24. It is a yearning of the beloved's hearts that we dedicate ourselves to giving proofs of love for one another. Love for our brethren is a concrete way of showing how much we love our beloved, loving the ones he loves so much he gave his own life for them. How can one not give our lives for those whom he gave his own life for? Basically, living spousal love after contemplation is giving that love to our brothers and sisters. In community life, you will find, you've probably already found if you've been in the prayer group, that it's not always easy to love everybody. Some people, we don't get along. Some people, in one, given moment or time will get on our nerves. It is normal. And so one, aspect of spousal love is to love the difficult ones, love the ones who get on your nerves, and just be united as brothers and sisters in Christ. Okay? Do concrete things to show love and to show that you guys are a family, because both in our writings and our statutes, Moses says that we are called to be a family. And I'm going to give you just a very simple example. My sister here in Montreal in the Covenant community, she is moving this week. My week is absolutely crazy. The reason why I'm recording this talk and not giving it live to you is because while you guys are watching this, I'm in Mexico animating a Life in Spirit seminar. So basically my week was cut off by this event, and I was running, and I was like, I wanted to do my personal prayer because I'm discerning for my definitive promises. My personal retreat. And I was like, gosh, I know that I must have one day at least where I go over there to my sister's and help her with her move. I didn't know how I was gonna do it. I sort of like looked all the options, and finally I decided that I'm gonna have to put my personal retreat after my trip, so that I can have this one day to go all the way to my sister's and help her. And that's exactly what I did yesterday. I went there. She lives a bit far from me. And I was there, I think, from like 12 noon to like 7 p.m., going back and forth in her house, putting things in boxes. And, it might sound dumb, but she hadn't asked me to do it. It's not something that I have to do, or, it's just something that, being brothers and sisters, we show up for each other in the times when we need it, and we don't need to wait for the other person to ask you, right? So that's an example of spousal love that we live with our brothers and sisters. Other examples with that same sister, because we're very few in Montreal. We're 4, right? And then another couple in Ottawa. So I have gotten sick at some point. I was hospitalized. I couldn't work for like a few months. And that same sister, she was there in the hospital. I actually discovered I was sick while I was at her house. She drove me to the hospital. Anyway, she did everything she had to do. And then, like a year or 2 later, she got sick. And she needed me to be with her while her husband watched and took care of the 3 kids. And so I was the one in the hospital. I was the one who pretty much sent her to emergency C-section. So basically, that's what spousal love is. It's not just me and Jesus. It starts with me and Jesus, but then it goes towards my brothers and sisters. So let's recap. First foot of the tripod is contemplation. Second foot of the tripod is unity. And the third foot of the tripod, which allows us to actually live spousal love, is, of course, evangelization. Because we receive so much love in Jesus when we contemplate him. We live so much love with our brothers and sisters that naturally, just like the 12 disciples, the 12 apostles of Jesus, who were with the Word of God, with Jesus himself, they lived the fraternal life. And so it was only natural that they would go out there and evangelize and give freely what they have freely received. And so that is evangelization. Okay? That is the events that your guys are called or not to go, you know. Sometimes you will have a ministry, for example, in A camps, they might call you and say, hey, you're responsible for this. So you go and you serve. Or sometimes you don't even have anything to do there. Nobody asks you anything. But it is your role and your pleasure and your duty as member of the community to be there for the evangelization of the youth, which is a part of our charism, right? So events, anything the community does, you are called to be there, right? And that is also a way of practicing spousal love. And the last question of our Q&A is, it kind of sounds like the young rich man questions to Jesus, you know. I'm already doing all of that, you know. I'm already following the tripod, praying, being united with my brothers and sisters, evangelizing. How can I grow in spousal love? And my answer for you is, do more than what you're asked. Okay? I just named you all the stuff that the community actually asks, and that is in our statutes, right? But there's always more needs than what is officially asked and officially said. Open your eyes. You guys have the life community with you. We in Montreal do not have the life community, but we have each other, right? You have the life community. Be attentive of the needs. You know, if you're one day you're I don't know, you're invited to sleep over and you see that there's no eggs in the fridge, for example, well, go ahead and go and buy these eggs and whatever you might have noticed that is missing, for example, you know. Or we just went through Lent and there was a campaign to fundraise money for our mission in Angola in Africa. So we already give our community of goods, which is a topic that we will talk about later, which is 15% of our salary. So sometimes it's like, I've done enough, I've given enough. You can always give more. And if you can, you are called to give more. Okay? So on top of the 15%, you can make another effort and give that little extra money for the kids in Angola, because that mission is growing and they need our input because they don't have covenant community and they're not self-sufficient, right? This is for material wise. But if we go back to contemplation, you can always do more. You can always make more time for Christ, right? You must have, guys, received Shalom is open on Fridays. Go to adoration, you know. I talked about personal retreats like the ones we do for this sermon. Do personal retreats more than once every 3 months, okay? And of course, the communion of goods, which is our next topic. Stay tuned. Shalom.